JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. Today we're looking back at the hot comics from August 21st, 2020, and I'm recording this on February 19th, 2021. As always, I give the dates just so you know when this information was the most relevant. And as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 for that week, as well as the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. This week we had 17 books that we're looking back at, and I'll tell you right up front, when I did cash or trash for these and made my predictions, I was not a big fan of this week's list. We'll see how I did, but, well, I will say that the list did better than what I expected, but there were still not a lot. There were still some books that were not good choices back then. But as always, this is about trying to understand the factors that made them hot, what has caused them to drop back or stay or go up since, so that we all make better choices when we're chasing those hot books. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's list. First up, we have our one option/TV news book, and that is Herogasm #1, the first appearance of Soldier Boy. And this is basically that Jensen Ackles was cast as Soldier Boy for The Boys Season 3. Now, mind you, this rumor and news came out before Season 2 had even started, but this caught the fact that he was coming in Season 3 caused this book to jump. Back then, it was a $30 to $50 book. 9.6s were going for just over 100. And this book is actually up a little bit. I thought this was going to be a trap. It's up a little bit. Now it's a $40 to $60 book. 9.8s are going for $200 to $250, which means the 9.6 is probably still right around that $100 range. I didn't see a recent sale of a 9.6. So I'll call this up a little bit. Good book, not a great one. But yeah, so there is, and maybe if he's a big star, then this book might jump again, but it's held steady. So, next we have our covers of the week, and this is, Ninjas. First up, we have Ninjas and Robots #1, and this is just the 1 in 5 Eastman cover. And Kevin Eastman doesn't do a lot of covers that aren't turtles, so when he does, his fans tend to kind of jump on these. And back then, this was a $15, $20 book. Now it's a $5 to $10 book, but there's only been 3 sales recently. A 9.8 did go for $200, but it's signed by Eastman, so yeah, that's what was going on there. So this one is definitely down after the initial Eastman fans had to track it down at release. It's definitely fallen back. Our next cover is the first of 2 Jen Bartel covers we're going to talk about. Is Star #4, the Jen Bartel 1 in 25 variant. This one was going for 3 times ratio at release, and back then $75 for a 1 in 25, which is really good for a 1 in 25 to go 3 times ratio. That's getting to almost the level where you think maybe it might be able to sustain a little more, but this one has not. There's only been 2 recent sales, one for $40 and one for $60, and the main reason for that is all the asking prices are $60 plus, and people just aren't willing to pay that anymore for this. I said this was an I'll Be Back. You could almost argue it's a trap. I put I'll Be Back down here, but this one is definitely down and has not sustained, although it's still a really cool looking cover. But I don't know how much interest there really is in this Star character at this point. Next we have America, #8, another Jen Bartel 1 in 25, and this is obviously all about America Chavez spec. We know she's coming to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness next year. We've had casting news. Back then, it was still just kind of spec, and it caused this particular cover to jump all the way to $150 to $200, really just based on being a really cool America Chavez cover. Now it's it's up to $200 to $250, so this one has continued to climb. 9.8 is up to $375. So yeah, this one's up and seems to be straight cash on this book. It's definitely continued to climb. A lot of interest in this cover. It's a really cool cover, and there's a lot of interest in this character for now. Our next cover is Thor #6, the Del Otto 1 in 50. This was a hot cover at release, going for $100 to $125 for 1 in 50, so a little over double ratio, which is, again, really, really good. And this one's now, though, a $40 to $60 book, so basically a ratio book. 9.8 will run you that 1 to 125 that it was running raw at release. So yeah, this book's another book that's definitely down and has not sustained. Really cool Thor cover, but just not enough to keep it above ratio. It's settled kind of in ratio, which is actually pretty good for a 1 in 50. Most 1 in 50s don't necessarily sustain that level of pricing. So the fact that it's even there is good, just not near what people were paying for it at release. Next, we have a book that I don't completely understand. I'm talking enough to cover. This is Avengers number 33 from this current run. As far as CBSI said at the time, it's the start of the Knights of Khonshu story. But it's really just based on the cover. There's no real first here or anything like that. Back then it was going for 25 plus. Now it's a $10 to $25 book. So it's fallen back, but not a ton. Not as much as I figured. 9.8s are running a 40 to 50. So there is people just really like this Moon Knight cover. It's just a cover A. There's nothing necessarily it's not harder to find or anything. But it's down, but it's still actually holding better than I expected that it would. Next, we have God Country number 1, the blue third print. So this was just like a $20 book for God Country number 1. And then Key Collector put out that it was a super low print for this one, so people kind of went crazy for it. It jumped all the way up. There were sales for all the way up to $180. So it jumped from that 120 and kind of peaked around 180 when they were talking about it. It jumped from that $20 and peaked around 180 for raw copies. Now it's a $1 to $25 book. It's still mostly a little more than that, but there literally was a sale for $1. Doesn't seem like it's that super hard to find. There's still several listed. A 9.8 only going for 40 to 70. So yeah, this one turned into I was not keen on somebody paying $180 for this, and this has not worked out at all for those folks. This one is way down. I will say it's a really great read. That little God Country run. So I would recommend it as a read, but definitely not a book that it was worth investing in, at least on its third print. With that, we're going to move into the comic buzz. And first up, we have Spider-Man number 234, the second print. This was the first new Sinister Six. There was a new Sinister Six team in this book. There was also Aaron Davis as the Iron Spider, but wasn't really sure back then why it was spiking. But raw copies were going for up to around 150. Now the most recent raw copy sale was in December, and it was for $50. The most recent 9.8 sale was in January for $150. And really, those are about the only sales. People are still asking 50 plus for this book, and it just won't sell. This book, I don't know why people chased it then, and it is definitely, people are not willing to pay prices, even a third of that now for it. And this book has fallen way back, and it was definitely not a good investment if you chased it. Next, we're going to talk about New Avengers number 10, the first appearance of Thane. Back then, this jumped up to a $20 to $40 book. A 9.8 was hitting 200, based on the news that rumors that Cates might be using him in the Thor run, or I think it was the Thor run that they thought he was going to use him in. So Cates is going to use the character. Let's go pay crazy prices for his first appearance. And yeah, this one is now a $5 to $20 book. 9.8 is down to around 125, which is kind of where it was at before this buzz happened back 6 months ago. So, first appearance of Thane is, a minor key. Still going for minor key prices, just not those prices from, Cates is going to use him rumors. Next, we have West Coast Avengers number 7, the first appearance of Jeff the Land Shark. And again, not sure why people started specking on Jeff, but they did. Back then, raw copies jumped up to $30. 9.8s were still only going for like $70, which isn't crazy. It's pretty cheap, really, for a $30 book. So they hadn't really responded the way the raw copies had, at least not yet. and now it's a $5 to $20 book. 9.8 are still in that 70-ish range. So it's down, not a ton. There's still a little, again, another minor key that just wasn't quite worth whatever was causing the buzz at the time. I wasn't sure. I couldn't really find anything specific that people were specking on there. With that, we're going to move to The Last Ronin Ashcan. So this is the preview of the Last Ronin series that came out beforehand, and it kind of resulted in, and people were not necessarily happy, at least according to what they were talking about with this in terms of the artwork, and resulted in some changes and a delay in the Last Ronin coming out. And those delays have continued as Last Ronin #2 just finally came out. But yeah, back then this was going for a $30 to $45 book, and I thought, since it was kind of unique, my expectation, and Turtles, everything was hot, I figured this would probably go up since it resulted in a change in the final product and all that kind of stuff. And it has. It's not a lot. It's still setting 40 to 80 for raw copies. Couldn't find a 9.8 sale. So I know this is way bigger. I don't know if this might actually be too big for the magazine. I know this is a really big book. It might fit in the magazine holder, but I know it's a really big book. But yeah, this one is definitely down. This one's up. This one's definitely up. Everything, still a lot of interest in this series, and still a lot of interest in Turtles. Sorry, I lost my place on the page for a second there. So, with that, we're going to move on to Thanos #16. First appearance of the Fallen One, Silver Surfer Black. And basically there was buzz that had to do with the Empire storyline that was going on, that he was going to play an important role, or maybe was going to make an appearance. And back then it caused it to jump to a $20 book. 9.8s were going for $140. Now it's a $5 to $30 book. So occasionally it's actually going for in that range of where it was back then, but you can also get it for $5, just depending on the sale and the timing. 9.8s are only going for $50 to $100. So yeah, this one's definitely down. It's definitely an I'll be back in terms of nothing really paid off there with that Empire storyline. So yeah, the buzz has just died currently on Silver Surfer Black. Next, we have Captain Marvel: The End, #1, and this hit the list because of speculation that there's a couple of first appearances in here, maybe more than that. There's just two that I know of. The first, Danny Cage, daughter of one of the childs of Luke and Jessica, and there's also an Irene LeBeau, which is Rogue and Gambit's child. And it's also a Momoko cover. But this was spiking because there was a solicitation for Captain Marvel that kind of indicated maybe they were going to bring... They were thinking Danny Cage back to play a role. Well, it turns out it was a completely different character that's in the current Captain Marvel storyline. So yeah, they were off on that, but on the prediction. And so this one was going for $20 back then, $100 for 9.8. But it's actually went up, and I think mostly because of the Momoko cover, because most people don't even list that it's on eBay, list a first appearance with it. And if they do, it's the Irene LeBeau and not the Danny Cage. But right now it's going 25 to 40, 9.8s are going to 100 and 125, and I think it's strictly on the basis of this Momoko cover. Even though it hit the list back then for spec around one of the characters, it's really the Momoko cover that's carrying this book. With that, we're going to go to Totally Awesome Hulk #1. The first Amadeus show as the Hulk. Back then, raw copies were up to $15. The 9.8 was $80. And I thought that was probably pretty cheap for this particular book. And it's turned out actually to be pretty close to right. It's up a little bit. 10 to 30 for raw copies. 9.8 are up to 100 to 125. It didn't jump like I actually expected it to. It's just kind of increased a little bit, edged up, but so probably still reasonably priced if for some reason they end up using Amadeus Cho in the future as the Hulk. Not sure that's going to happen anytime soon, though, with Bruce still around and them just getting ready to start the She-Hulk run. So Next, we have, we're going to move from Comic Buzz to DC Movie, and we got Shazam number 8, the second appearance of Black Adam and his retold origin. So his first appearance in the Bronze Age, second appearance overall. Back then, raw copies were averaging $90. A 9.4 went for $200. Now raw copies are averaging around $30. There's been 3 recent 9.4 sales: 130, 140, and 210. So this has definitely been an I'll be back. It's down a little bit. Not a lot of buzz around the Black Adam movie at the moment. It's still coming. It's just not a lot of buzz or talk about it right now. 2 books to go. Both kind of Marvel movie related, but from the Sony side of things. First, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 15, the first appearance of Kraven the Hunter. And there has been rumors that Kraven was getting his own Sony movie, kind of like Morbius and Venom did. And that caused this book to, like, mid-grades were going for $1,400, an 8.5 hit $2,400, a 9.4 hit $4,500. Since there's now currently rumors that Keanu Reeves is going to potentially play Kraven, which has caused this book to basically continue to climb. This is a straight cash book anyway. This is a classic Spider-Man villain. Raw copies right now are kind of going in that 5 to 100 to 1,000 range, but there hasn't really been a very, like, most of these are pretty much mid to low grade copies. So a little lower grade probably than those copies they were talking about necessarily. But an 8.5 is up to 4,500. A 9.4 just recently, like, I think it's a record. I couldn't confirm that for sure, but Heritage had one just sale like last week for $13,200 for a 9.4 of this book, which is just a huge money for a 9.4. So yeah, this book is way up. People are specking on Kraven, plus people just love this book and this character. Last book on our list is Marvel Spotlight number 32, first appearance of Jessica Drew, the Spider-Woman, the Jessica Drew version of Spider-Woman, and this was based on Olivia Wilde putting out, basically news coming out that she was going to be directing a Spider movie, and everybody's specking that it is going to be Jessica Drew. We never got really any kind of confirmation that that's what the choice was going to be. I know there's been talk of Silk, there's been talk of a Silk show, and not a movie. So we'll see if it's going to be Jessica Drew. Hope so. But I think a lot of people were assuming that based on her, like Olivia Wilde, but she's not playing the character. She's directing the movie. So we'll see where they actually go and what character they actually use for that. But back then, raw copies were going for averaging around $300. A 9.8 hit $1,730. Now raw copies are 60 to 300. But 300, like high grade are going for 300 or a little more. Lower grade are kind of $60 range. The last 9.8 sale that I could find was way back in October for $2,100, so that was up a little bit. 9.4s are setting $325 to $375, which is about where they were back then. So overall, this book has actually been pretty steady. Maybe it's creeped up a little bit on the 9.8. It's hard to tell. It's been so long since there's been a sale. Maybe down a little bit on the raw copies, but they're still kind of in that same range. So I kind of just put this one as steady. So that's this week's list. Obviously, those last 2 books are great. The last Ronin book is still doing pretty well. And some of the other books did better than I expected, but there was also some really bad choices in here in terms of like that Spider-Man 234 and God Country third print that just really didn't hold their value. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it as always, and we'll catch you next time.